One of Gautama's teachings on the poison of greed is told in a Jataka tale about one of Gautama's past embodiments, as a young man who heals a king's insatiable greed. Jatakas are popular stories about Gautama's previous lives, which illustrate a lesson in some aspect of the teaching. This Jataka tale is about a king who becomes consumed with greed when a god, disguised as a young man he meets, promises him the lordship of 3 cities, but then disappears without telling the king his name or whereabouts. The king sends his army to find the young man, but search as they might all over the city, he is not to be found. As the Jataka tale relates it, on hearing this, the king became gloomy. Then in his body, full of greed, a burning arose. As the food went in, so it came out. Physicians could not cure him. The king was exhausted. Gautama, who in this embodiment was a young man, hears of the king's plight and proceeds to the palace and sends a message that he is ready to cure the king. The king said, "Great and most renowned physicians, known far and near, are not able to cure me. What can a young lad do? Pay his expenses and let him depart." The young man made answer, "I want no fee for my physic, but I will cure him. Let him simply and solely pay me the price of my remedy." When the king heard this, he agreed and admitted him. The young man saluted the king. "Fear nothing, O king," said he. "I will cure you. Do but tell me the origin of your disorder." The king answered in wrath, "What is that to you? Make up your medicine." "O great king," quoth he, "it is the way of physicians, first to learn whence the disease arises, then to make a remedy to suit." "Well, well, my son," said the king, and proceeded to tell the origin of the disease, beginning where that young man had come and made his promise that he would take and give to him the lordship over 3 cities. "Thus, my son, the disease arose from greed. Now cure it if you can." "What, O king," quoth he, "can you capture those cities by grieving?" "Why, no, my son. Since that is so, why grieve, O great king? Everything animate or inanimate must pass away and leave all behind, even its own body. Even should you obtain rule over 4 cities, you could not at one time eat 4 plates of food, recline on 4 couches, wear 4 sets of robes. You ought not to be the slave of desire, for desire, when it increases, allows no release from the 4 states of suffering." Thus, having admonished him, the great being declared the law in the following stanzas. "He that desires a thing, and then its fulfillment, blesses his desire. In him desires throng more and more, as thirst in time of heat oppresses. A king that should subdue the whole world wide, the whole wide world up to the ocean bound, with this side of the sea unsatisfied, would crave what might beyond the sea be found. Brood on desires within the heart, content will ne'er arise. Who turns from these and the true cure descries," which means discovers, "he is content, whom wisdom satisfies. Best to be full of wisdom, these no lust can set afire. Never the man with wisdom filled is slave unto desire. For each desire that is let go, a happiness is won. He that all happiness would have must with all lust have done." But as the Bodhisattva was repeating these stanzas, his mind being concentrated on the king's white sunshade, there arose in him the mystic rapture attained through white light. The king on his part became whole and well. He arose in joy from his seat and addressed him thus: "When all those physicians could not heal me, a wise youth has made me whole by the medicine of his wisdom." El Morya has given to us the key to the schooling of desire by God control. He gave this dictation on April 27th, 1986.
Each one then must school the desire. The desire is not king and queen. The desire is subject to the will of a spirit spark who descended. The desire is an accoutrement, a garment, an effect of an identity in God, beloved. Therefore, the identity may direct all desire according to the will. But the will not succeed without love or without wisdom or without the purity of the drive of the mother. Thus understand, when you recognize wrong desire, you must enter into the heart of Alpha and Omega, hence into the heart of the Gemini mind of God, into the great circle of the Tai Chi, where God is. And you must put on the cloak of God's desire. You must try it on and you must say, if my desire is incorrect, and I suspect that it is, what is God's desiring in this matter? I will go to the fount. I will experience it. I will put on my devotion, my own Krishna consciousness. I will rise in my holy Christ self to the heart of God's desire. I will see through the eyes of God's desire. I will love through the heart of God's desire. I will speak the word of God's desire. I will try it on and see how comfortable I am in this state of God desire, and if I may leave the moorings of my human desires that bind me to dangerous individuals and circumstances in the name of human good. You see, beloved, there is only one way out of the limited, unfruitful, unbeneficial desire, and that is to go to the heart of God, to mount the tree of life, to enter in and say, what is my God's desiring in this matter? I have no more struggle in me. I can no longer be torn between this and that. For too long I have been vacillating like a pendulum which Morya cannot even keep track of, nor would he.
Amoga City. Amoga City. The name means Almighty Conqueror. His wisdom is the all-accomplishing wisdom, the wisdom of perfected action. This wisdom consumes envy or jealousy. On the 11:30 line of the clock, the omega of the 11 o'clock line of Sagittarius, God victory through the throat chakra. The perversion is resentment, revenge, and retaliation, which is born out of envy and jealousy and ignorance on the 5 o'clock line. The Alpha on the 12 o'clock, Capricorn, the power of God, the crown chakra, its perversion, criticism, condemnation, and judgment. When you have CCJ, you cannot perfect action, because CCJ is the denial of the Christ in another, which immediately rebounds to oneself, and one cannot precipitate perfection. The mudra is fearlessness, giving protection. Left hand in the lap cupped, right hand at level of the breast, palm forward, fingers upwards, flat or together. Close your fingers together, not spread apart. The bija of Amoga City is Ah. Ah. Om Amoga City Ah. Om Amoga City Ah. This is the all-accomplishing wisdom. It is the swiftness of the Mercurian mind and the Gemini mind that attains the victory at the top of the clock. Perfected action conquers envy or jealousy. It must, for without conquering it, it itself does not manifest. Evans Wentz says that this wisdom gives perseverance and unerring action in things spiritual. The story of Kassapa illustrates Gautama's teaching on the defeating of envy as one of the first steps on the path, very close to ignorance, and as you know, we chart them both on the 5 o'clock line, and both of them lead to the desire for revenge. At that time there lived in Uruvela the Jatilas, Brahmin hermits with matted hair, worshipping the fire and keeping a fire dragon. And Kassapa was their chief. Kassapa was renowned throughout all India, and his name was honored as one of the wisest men on earth and an authority on religion. And the Blessed One, Gautama Buddha, went to Kassapa of Uruvela, the Jatila, and said, "Let me stay a night in the room where you keep your sacred fire." Kassapa, seeing the Blessed One in his majesty and beauty, thought to himself, "This is a great Muni and a noble teacher. Should he stay overnight in the room where the sacred fire is kept, the serpent will bite him and he will die." And he said, "I do not object to your staying overnight in the room where the sacred fire is kept, but the serpent lives there. He will kill you, and I should be sorry to see you perish." But the Buddha insisted, and Kassapa admitted him to the room where the sacred fire was kept. And the Blessed One sat down with his body erect, surrounding himself with watchfulness. In the night, the dragon came to the Buddha, belching forth in rage his fiery poison, and filling the air with burning vapor, but could do him no harm. And the fire consumed itself, while the world-honored one remained composed. And the venomous fiend became very wroth, so that he died in his anger. When Kassapa saw the light shining forth from the room, he said, "Alas, what misery! Truly the countenance of Gautama, the great Sakya Muni, is beautiful, but the serpent will destroy him." In the morning, the Blessed One showed the dead body of the fiend to Kassapa, saying, "His fire has been conquered by my fire." And Kassapa thought to himself, "Sakya Muni is a great samana and possesses high powers, but he is not holy like me." There was in those days a festival, and Kassapa thought, "The people will come hither from all parts of the country, and they will see the great Sakya Muni. When he speaks to them, they will believe in him and abandon me." And he grew envious. When the day of the festival arrived, the Blessed One retired and did not come to Kassapa. And Kassapa went to the Buddha on the next morning and said, "Why did the great Sakya Muni not come?" The Tathagata replied, "Didst thou not think, O Kassapa, that it would be better if I stayed away from the festival?" And Kassapa was astonished and thought, "Great is Sakyamuni. He can read my most secret thoughts, but he is not holy like me." And the Blessed One addressed Kassapa and said, "Thou seest the truth, but acceptest it not because of the envy that dwells in thy heart. Is envy holiness? Envy is the last remnant of self that has remained in thy mind. Thou art not holy, Kassapa. Thou hast not yet entered the path." And Kassapa gave up his resistance. His envy disappeared, and bowing down before the Blessed One, he said, "Lord, our Master, let me receive the ordination from the Blessed One." Mother Mary presented the Ascended Master solution to the problem of envy in her Pearl of Wisdom of October 8th, 1972. She said, "One of the more difficult matters confronting the seeker after spiritual grace is the resolving of those problems of an emotional nature which arise between people as the result of their misunderstandings. Quite frankly, much human difficulty is involved with human jealousy and with patterns of resentment of the achievements of others. We have found it of great help for those who desire to overcome this type of situation to recognize achievement as God's. For when men perceive all human achievements as the mark of wonder upon the ages of the ages, when they begin to understand that their achievement can be greatly enhanced through calls to God for assistance, when they understand that true greatness is the greatness of God made manifest in man, they will not resent the achievement of others nearly as much. They will look behind the screen of the human monad and behold a hand of divine grace helping to mold a better world, a world of understanding and preparation for the coming of the kingdom. Saint Germain, the master alchemist, has instructed us on the Ascended Master antidote for all of the 5 poisons. He says, "Human creation exists right within your own physical orbit, interpenetrating the atoms and cells of your physical body, and contaminating the etheric, mental, and emotional bodies as well. Our next step is to give you an immediate antidote for this poison by teaching you the proper method of working out your own salvation. This is accomplished as you invoke the sacred fire each day to dissolve as much of this sticky and tricky molasses-like substance as the law will allow. This process, known as transmutation, will speed up the action of your own electrons, causing the densified substance hampering body, mind, and soul to be transmuted into pure light, thereby preparing your being and consciousness for a marvelous future in service to God and man. The removal of these accumulations from the wide open spaces is most efficiently accomplished by the violet transmuting flame. This merciful flame of God vibrates at the highest frequency of the spiritual spectrum and thus carries the most intense transmutative action of the Holy Spirit." Let us seal this teaching by giving the 5 Bija mantras of the 5 Dhyani Buddhas.